joining. Hopefully everyone had a great week so far. I love doing Thursday afternoon or early evening events because they're definitely a nice start to an early weekend in many cases. For those who I have not had an opportunity to meet through one of my National Society of High School Scholar events or another webinar that I did, my name is Morgan Vasquez. I am the global head of campus recruiting and emerging talent at BNY Mellon here in New York City. I'm also a proud NSHSS member myself. I joined the organization back in 2007 as a high school junior, and I've stayed pretty actively involved with the society over the past few years. And I'm really excited that now both of my worlds are colliding when we talk about identifying careers within financial services and then ultimately here now from my NSHSS experience. So really excited to be here today. We have a great panels discussion lined up for you where you'll get an opportunity to hear from some of our analysts and our associates about their backgrounds, about some of the things you should be thinking about as a high school student who has a specific passion for financial services. And it'll be a really great dialogue for them to give their own experiences, really share some key tips, tricks, and advice for all of you. But I'm really excited about our keynote speaker tonight. I had the opportunity to work with Luis Ochoa, who is our keynote for this evening's event, quite heavily, and he has a fantastic background, and he has definitely played a really important role in the success of our campus recruiting programs at BNY Mellon. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but he will walk through a bit of his background, and then we'll just have an opportunity really to understand a bit more about Luis, about him identifying a career within financial services, and how his career has ultimately played out into the role he has today as a vice president within our digital and strategy team. So Luis, I will turn it over to you. Thanks so much for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Morgan and Michael, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. It's really great to be here. As Morgan mentioned, I'm part of the digital organization at BNY Mellon, so that's focused on how do we use innovation, recreate and reimagine the client experience, and really use strategy in order to solve for client outcomes. So things like retirement, buying a house, and looking at the entire spectrum of what the clients are looking for with respect to their investment needs. My particular path to BNY Mellon is a little bit untraditional. I went to Stanford for undergrad and studied economics, and then from there knew that I wanted to pursue a career in financial services, just speaking with folks such as through these forums and then through some mentorship programs as well to really get a sense as to what is the day-to-day like, what is it like to be firsthand in terms of the experience, the financial modeling, the corporate finance, those sorts of topics. So I feel like with those types of conversations, you have a chance to really understand from different people's perspectives from all sorts of levels, what is it like to work in finance and to really solve for client outcomes at the end of the day. Well, a lot of people have asked me when you go through the sort of like the recruiting process, what does it mean to network? Because typically people will say you have to network, go to events, talk to your alumni, things of that nature. And so for me, what that means is when you have a chance to meet someone that you think could be a really great sounding board or provide a great perspective on a topic that you're interested in, tell them how you're doing. Keep in touch. They want to learn about what you're up to in school. Maybe you learn something interesting in your math class or in your science class. It's very interesting to trade those sorts of stories because you provide a different perspective on the world. Another way to not network, but really build relationships is to share your insight, share your view on topics. So maybe you read an interesting news article. Instead of just forwarding along and saying, hey, I read this interesting post, take a moment to solve for what are the top 3 things you want the reader to get out of this article, so that you are showing you can take a somewhat complex fact pattern and you can distill the critical components and present them in a very short and succinct way to the reader so that you can have a chance to show what you know and at the same time show how you can communicate. Another way to really effectively build relationships is to be that sort of connector. You'll meet a lot of people through your career, through these types of forums, connect them to one another if it makes sense. And the third is maybe you see an interesting event yourself in terms of, hey, there's a forum that this potential mentor or someone who is a sounding board might be potentially interested in attending as well. So you're essentially creating opportunities for not just the people that you know, but you're also building the relationship in the process. when I think about just shifting gears, how students can prepare for an internship, the real crux of it is just gaining experience. So this could be things like being active in school with respect to sort of the student clubs or organizations, such as this one as well. Making sure that you have a leadership role to create opportunities for others, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about to be a leader in terms of setting the example and also demonstrating that you have this ability to share your expertise. The other component I wanted to share is taking on a volunteering type of role. So you probably have heard get involved in the community. There's different types of angle as well. A particular angle that I'd like you to take a look at if you're looking at this is skills-based volunteering. So these are things like maybe you're helping out with marketing, maybe you're creating sort of like a newsletter for a nonprofit. There's a lot of organizations out there that would very much value your time and energy on these sorts of topics, because again, you're bringing a different type of perspective, and you're building your experience as well within particular types of areas. Maybe it's finance, maybe it's marketing. It's still experience in terms of showcasing that the strong work ethic and the ability to take on different types of assignments. And the third I would say is, it's almost summertime, so maybe you have some summer plans or something. But if you're still thinking about those, you could take a class, maybe like a Coursera, or like explore different topics that might be of interest to you. A community college class. That's something that I did when I was in high school. Really explore the things that might be beneficial with respect to, maybe it's an economics class, a marketing class. It's an opportunity to take a chance to deep dive into these particular topics. And it might be a little bit more challenging, but at the end of the day, it's kind of an opportunity to expand your skill set. And from there, apply what you've learned. So that goes back to gaining experience, volunteering, and in the process of applying what you've learned, you're strengthening your understanding and very much showcasing your leadership ability in terms of, okay, you brought this from the classroom, how does that apply to our experience for a particular nonprofit or in the workplace? And that would be particularly valuable no matter where you go with respect to your careers. That said, happy to take any questions.
So Luis, I have a few questions that I'd love for you to address to this group. And one thing I often hear from high school students is around their interest. They have such varied interests, and sometimes they don't really know how to hone into a specific area. So I think the first part I would like for you to answer is just, what is digital at BNY Mellon, right? It's a new function. I think when sometimes people hear the word bank, so Bank of New York Mellon, word banks in our name, people automatically think, oh, is it going to be the place that I walk in and I cash a check? Or when I need money, I go to the ATM there. I think when we really dig down into what we do, there's so many different facets of it. And I think digital is one of those new hotspots that have really emerged in terms of taking our business to the next level. So can you talk a little bit about digital at BNY Mellon? And then ultimately, the follow-up to that question would be, what does your day look like? What do you focus on? How do you kind of prioritize what's on your radar and what's on your plate?
Absolutely. Digital at BNY Mellon really means taking departments such as operations, technology, and the other lines of businesses and functions, and really having them work together in order to create something new. Maybe that's looking at entirely new businesses, or reimagining the client experience, or even looking at how we leverage things like machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's a particularly important part of the firm, as it represents the innovation center and also where the firm is going with respect to its future direction. In terms of the day-to-day, what I focus on is solving problems. So it's a lot of, someone walks in and says, hey, should we enter this market? I provide a structure to that. So it's conducting the market sizing, understanding the competitive landscape, and looking at the economics of the situation in terms of the financial resources required and what are the projected benefits. So when you're coming up with these sorts of structures, it's an opportunity to really build relationships with very senior level stakeholders and connect the dots, so to speak, in terms of taking a very complex data set and identifying where the opportunity is with respect to how to move forward with the organization.
Great, thank you. So I have one more question that I will raise, but I do want to encourage, I know there's quite a number of folks who are joining us in the attendees. So we want to make sure we address your questions as well. So there is a chat box that you will see if you want to put in any questions there. We did allocate some time to ask Louise questions, so feel free to throw them in the chat box and we will get to them. But one of the other questions I have is around thinking back to when you were in high school, thinking back to when you had to select a college to go back to when you had to pick a major that you wanted to study. What was going through your head at that time? And ultimately, how did you really rely on your internal instincts to make some of those decisions? Because we all know, we've all been there on the panel and in our professionals. We've been there where we said, okay, well, this is something we really want to pursue, but that's something we really want to pursue. And then you take it a next step further and you say, okay, if I want to get into this career, I have to study that. So what were some of those internal dialogues that you had with yourself as you were preparing to go to college?
I think the very first was, what do I want to study? So I came up with a list of potential topics. I really liked social studies, which economics is a part of. And so, yeah, I can read like news articles or read about a topic, but for me, the best way to really get a sense of this is to just try it out. And so I took some community college classes. I took some extra classes in high school, sort of like the honors level type of facet, in order to get a deep dive on these particular topics. And so I just went down a list. I looked at psychology, I looked at history, and then landed in economics because I thought it would be a really good foundation in terms of understanding the markets and how economies work in general. Another thing that I thought about was what school I want to go to. I'm from San Francisco originally. My family's from Latin America, Mexico, and El Salvador. And so for me, what I was interested in is where is the school that has a strong reputation for the topic that I'm interested in, but also has a balance between academics and athletics. I was a varsity fencer when I was in college. And so that sort of balance in terms of providing not only the academic rigor, but at the same time, a place that really sponsors and really values the student participation in terms of student groups is something that was particularly interesting to me and really motivated my decision to sign up for Stanford.
That's great. And I see a question coming through, and I will definitely toss it to you as well, but I do think there's something I want to just talk a bit about. So the question's around best places to volunteer for teens to learn more about finance. So one thing I typically encourage when I speak to students at different NSHSS sessions, and they're sophomores or they're juniors, and they're talking to me about not being able to find an internship because they're too young or they're not college students, I think it's really important to say, okay, what are the core skills of finance and what do I need to learn in order to be successful? And you can implement that no matter where you are. So when you talk about volunteer in this sentence, it kind of sparked something in me that I wanted to share around you can work at a nonprofit, and work, I mean volunteer at a nonprofit in their accounting department, or you can volunteer at your local synagogue, church, mosque, whatever your religious affiliation is. You can work in the accounting department. You can collect money. You can go and learn finance working at Starbucks and being a manager at Starbucks. So I think it's about not necessarily the job, but think about the skills and give back volunteering, as Louise said, around skill-based learning. Think about where else you can find that skill-based learning. And in many cases, the opportunities are right in front of you. And you just need to say, okay, where can I volunteer to shadow someone, or where can I volunteer to really learn more about that? So that was just my 2 cents from it. But Louise, any other ideas you have for somebody who's 15, 16, and they really want to get into finance, but they can't necessarily get into the job just yet?
I think you hit the nail right on the head, because even in my own experience, I volunteered for a professional association as their head of strategy. And so it's practicing wearing the hat, reading relevant sort of lessons in terms of critical thinking and strategic planning, and applying them into your day-to-day so that you're learning as you're applying through these particular experiences. I would say that's the best bet in terms of not only are you helping the community grow, but at the same time, you're showcasing your skill set and also developing the expertise at the exact same time.
Absolutely agree. Okay, so the next question is a very prominent one right now in the environment we're in. What advice would you have for a college senior who's looking to graduate right now and pursue a finance career or a career within financial services, given the ever-changing job market and everything we're facing right now with COVID?
I would say keep an open mind. I would say that instead of thinking of, I want this particular job at such and such firm, think about what are the sort of like neighborhood of jobs. So maybe it's not corporate finance, but maybe it's management consulting, or if you're looking internally at a company for their strategy team, there's a whole like neighborhood of particular job functions that I wouldn't say that they're one and the same, but they're very similar in terms of like the core skills that are emphasized. Things like attention to detail, critical thinking, the opportunity to take a complex story and to give you the so what or the conclusion and the advice, those particular items.
And then one last question. So actually, I think we'll have time for two more. So one is work-life balance. Can you talk a little bit about that? So what do you do to kind of structure some type of work-life balance, or as we typically say, work-life integration currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a common fact that a lot of people are working from home these days. So what I do is I just make a open communication with my team in terms of, hey guys, this is when we're going to have the sort of like core working sessions. Sometimes I'll block off time in a day and we'll just walk through deliverables as a group and progress them. So things like walking through models together or looking at particular presentation pages, making sure that we're on the same level in terms of what are we trying to communicate and what is the recommendation that we're presenting. Another thing that I do is, just take an interest in what people are up to, because we give each other that sort of opportunity to, yes, we're available and happy to help out, but at the same time, respectful of the fact that people have to balance out the day-to-day with the workday itself. And absolutely agree with you. It's more like a work-life integration and making sure that all the bases are covered.
Great. And then last question for the audience before my final question. And this next question, I just want to preface it by saying it'll be a personal opinion, so there's no right or wrong answer, but this will hopefully help guide some of the students that have this question in mind. And it's very common. So an economics degree is often in a liberal arts program or liberal arts college, whereas a finance degree is within a specific business school. So Luis, from your perspective, do you think one's better than the other? Would you encourage them to pursue one or the other? What are the main differences, and what would you really say to somebody who might want to be a finance major or an economics major?
I would say try out both classes in terms of like different topics, because you'll never know unless you try it. I feel like the opportunities for both majors are pretty similar with respect to very interesting career choices in the field of finance. And really, I feel that both are quite versatile in terms of the degree fields that people are studying. In terms of how to go about making that choice, it's just a matter of trying it out and continuing that sort of interest to understand, hey, is this something that I'm particularly interested in? If I want to go narrower or broader in terms of my learning, because at the end of the day, it's a foundational that you're building up as you're looking to prepare for careers and really share that expertise as well.
Awesome. And then final question to wrap it up. If you could look back and give your high school self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say be patient. I feel like a lot of things are really about being not only persistent, patient, but applied as well, because that's a way that you can really develop a reputation and also just pay it forward as well in terms of if you learn something, make use of it, apply it in your day-to-day. And when you have a chance and when you're in my shoes, just provide advice or don't wait for that moment, but, share your expertise, I think is particularly key.
Awesome. And to conclude this session, this is a fun little exercise that I like to do with all of our keynotes and our different events. Just a little, we like to say human element of who the person is. So quick lightning round, we just have 6 questions for you, whatever the first thing off the top of your head, and then some are this or that. So to wrap it up, coffee or tea, Luis?
Coffee.
Beach or pool?
Pool.
Big city or small town?
Big city.
Early morning or late night?
Early morning.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
And then 2 questions. What's your favorite destination that you've traveled to? And then what's the number 1 on your bucket list when we're allowed to travel again?
Number 1 is favorite place to visit is Mexico City. And number 2 on the bucket list is, when we're going to travel again, I'd like to visit my family and, just catch up in person. I think that'd be pretty awesome. San Francisco.
I agree. That's great. Yeah, I have love to get out to the West Coast as well once things settle down a bit. So, Louise, thank you so much. That was super helpful. I think the students really took away some great piece of advice. So, appreciate your time, and we look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Stay safe. Okay, so jumping to our next session, again, I think Luis did a fantastic job just setting the context and really giving you some information about his path and his trajectory to the success that he's been in now, and then ultimately just giving you some insight. And most importantly, what we're really here for is answering your questions. So when the NSHSS team approached me about having this webinar and we walked through what made the most sense, we didn't want to sit here for 60 minutes just walking through this is BNY Mellon, this is your career path. We really wanted to help put some personal touches on it and really just be available to answer questions that you have. That's the one piece that if I look back when I was in your shoes, I wish I would have had more opportunity just to ask any question that was on my mind. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. And as I mentioned, Luis was fantastic, and we have a few more fantastic individuals at BNY Mellon who's going to lead our next session in our panel of associates and analysts who they're in their own way have been extremely successful in such a short period of time. So I'll turn it over to my colleague, Michael Jones, to kick off the next session.
I think I got myself unmuted. Can we all hear me good? Awesome. All right. Well, welcome to the session. So I have a group of panelists here with me, but I'll start by just introducing myself. So my name is Michael Jones. I work at BNY Mellon as a lead campus recruiter. So my job is to hire the interns that work here in the US. But I work in a team that's global. So we do place interns in the UK, and we also place interns in our Asian markets as well. So with me, I'm going to allow everybody to take a chance to introduce yourself. Rachel, I'm going to start with you because I see you first. Just to go ahead and introduce yourself, if you can share with the students what you do and what college you went to and even the high school that you went to. You might be muted, Rachel. Uh-oh.
Okay, we want to throw it over to Dylan and we'll get Rachel figured
Yes.
out. Okay, awesome.
All right, so hi everyone. My name is Dylan Kreider. I graduated from Villanova University last May, so just about a year ago now. I was a finance and accounting major with a minor in business analytics. I was on the sailing team there, did a few different extracurriculars outside of that, and I went to high school. I'm originally from Connecticut. I went to Norwich Free Academy. It's a pretty big high school in Eastern Connecticut here. Yeah.
All right. Chris, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah, so my name is Christopher Oricchio. I grew up on Long Island. I went to Hopfall Hills High School West. After attending Hills West, I went to Penn State University, where I majored in accounting with a concentration in real estate risk management. While at Penn State, I joined a fraternity. I also became a student manager of the Penn State lacrosse team, and also became a student ambassador of McGraw-Hill, where I focused in digital learning. But best thing I can stress right now is just, from what you can hear from myself, is just get involved.
Awesome. Thanks. Katie, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Katie Tucker. I graduated from Manhattan College in 2018. I majored in accounting and finance. I am originally from Maine, but I moved to New York for college, and I stayed there after. So I now work at the Bank of New York. I joined through an operations campus analyst program, and now I am a senior analyst working in operations strategy.
Awesome. Thank you. And now looping back to Rachel, let's see if she has her tech problems are over. Rachel, can you hear us?
Joining, so we can just kick it off, and when Rachel answers the first question, we'll give her some time to introduce herself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to get things started, like thinking back, what was your scariest thought about going to college and deciding on that career? What was that scariest moment for you like?
I can
I
start
can
if you'd
take
like.
that first.
Yeah, go ahead.
You got it, Chris. Okay, I'll go. So I think the most intimidating thing for me was that I was moving away from where I grew up. So I was moving from Maine to New York City. So that was a little bit intimidating because it was just kind of jumping into the unknown. With that said, it was a great experience. It got me out of my comfort zone, and I think I grew a lot from it. So kind of one piece of advice would be don't be, intimidated if you are looking to go to a school. Maybe that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because it can really pay off in the end if you do put yourself out there and take on those new opportunities.
Chris?
For myself, it was more about meeting my expectations and also meeting the expectations that my family had set for me. And what I would say with that point is it's okay to fail. And by failing sometimes, you actually can walk away with lessons learned that will only help you in the future. So for me, going to Penn State, it was a big school, and really there, making an impact, getting involved, and especially just wanting to fit in. So coming from high school on Long Island, going to a school of almost 50,000 students, you don't really know where to start. But by meeting people, talking to people, all those experiences, they basically help you in understanding what it is that you want to do because you learn from their mistakes or their lessons learned or things that they did that you enjoyed or things that you want to aspire to also achieve. And from there, that kind of guided me to where I am today. Making sure that the expectations I set for myself are achievable, but also knowing that if I don't meet those expectations, it's okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And Dylan?
Yeah, so for me, I think it was mostly just the uncertainty of kind of moving away, as they both mentioned already. Just going somewhere different. I'm from a very small town in Connecticut, so my graduating class in 8th grade only had 26 kids. I did go to a larger high school, so that was a little bit of an easier transition. Um, but still, just going into a new atmosphere, being hours away from home, definitely a different experience. It's all, as I said, it's all just a very uncertain time. So kind of going into that, um, you kind of create this image in your head of what your expectations should be, and then you get there and that may change. So it's definitely just being flexible and adjusting to the situation that you end up in once you get there, I think.
Awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. So obviously, as you're graduating from high school, you're thinking about what you want to do with your career and how you want to select your major and things like that, even the selection of schools. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you were able to make that selection and find your place of what school you want to go to and what major and career you want to do? And how about we start with Christopher this time? Chris, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So with this question, I always like to think of this quote that I kind of created myself is if you know the destination, you'll find the direction. And with that being said, I had spoken to lots of different people and, took what they had given to me and kind of, put myself in a future aspect and kind of thought, what it is I wanted to do. And I made that criteria for myself. And then I found what that was that would get me to that point. So for me, I knew I wanted to work in New York City. I knew I wanted to work for a large organization. I knew I wanted to be in finance, but I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to be in finance. And that's one thing I will prep you on now. Never go to a job or a career fair and say, well, I want to work in finance because that can mean so many things to one person. So, basically what I did from that point is I took a step back and said, okay, well, I know I want to be in finance. So let me start with the language, and that's accounting. So that's when I told to myself, let me major in accounting, take everything that I can learn from there, understanding a balance sheet, an income statement, and from there, seeing what it is that I want to do in finance. And that's how I ended up where I am today, working in investment management.
Awesome. Katie?
So I really like Chris's quote. I think that rings true. If you know where you want to go, sometimes you have to work backwards to get to where you want to be. So personally, I knew coming from a small town, I wanted to be in the city. I wanted to move to New York City. So that's where I went to college and ultimately ended up staying. and live now. But then in terms of picking a major, I did know I wanted to work in finance. At the time, I did not know kind of how broad finance was. But when I started school, I took a few accounting classes. And I actually found out that I really liked accounting as well. So might not be so great at narrowing down because I just added that on as well. So I ended up being a double major in accounting and finance because I really enjoyed both of them. And it ended up, really positioning me well. But I don't think that's to say necessarily that you do need to have a certain major, you need to have kind of multiple to get where you want to be. But I would kind of second Chris's advice that if you know where you want to go, you can definitely start taking smaller steps to get there to make sure you reach your ultimate goal.
Awesome. Thank you. Dylan?
Yeah, so my experience was a little different. I didn't know where I wanted to end up going in. I was not a business major at all. I went in as an undeclared liberal arts major. So I really did not have a pin on any idea of what I wanted to do, which I know isn't really the most helpful piece of advice. But I think just keeping an open mind, the only way I found out where I wanted to be now was by taking a bunch of different classes. Just introduce yourself to as many different things as you can, because that really helps you find out what you're interested in and what you're not interested in. And in the end, that's going to be the most useful thing for you actually making a decision on what you want to spend the rest of your life doing, because you don't want to go to work every day and have it be something that you don't want to go and do. So just look at what your interests are, see if there's a class or two that aligns. If a school has a particular program for what you're interested in, maybe look into that school over another one, and really just weigh those options when you're trying to consider everything.
Absolutely. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and fast forward to your current working roles. So can you tell me, what is your favorite part about working in financial services?
Would you like me to start?
Sure.
For me, it's every day is a challenge, and I know that may not be the most welcoming response, but ultimately, when you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you only allow yourself to come out a better person. And with that being said, some scenarios for me where I find myself uncomfortable or challenged is when my manager comes to me and says, we have this mutual fund that's performing really well in this one area. Now go look at our competitors and tell me why we stand out against them. There's a whole universe of competitors that I basically have to go into. I have to understand, how my fund aligns to a competitor's fund. And basically from there to come to him, whether it's a day later, 2 days later, with all this analysis that I put forth. And sometimes I have to basically leverage all these metrics in finance, whether it's, standard deviation, Sharpe ratio. And ultimately, to get to that point, I leverage my network or my connections, because I'm not always going to go to the people I work with for advice. I do most of the time, but sometimes I like to get an external opinion. And that's when I go to my friends, mentors, professors. So it's really important as you progress in your career, as you get, as you mature, you get older, that you make connections, you build a network that, of people that are doing the same things as you, but also that things are not doing the same as you, whether they're doing a more creative path or something along those lines that's different than what you're doing. But ultimately, what it comes back to is being put in a challenging situation and taking advantage of those things around you to make that situation unchallenging.
Awesome. Katie?
So I think my favorite part about working in financial services is how many opportunities there are kind of within the industry. So when I started 2 years ago, I started in a role focusing on tax. And after I had majored in accounting, it felt like that made sense that I should start in tax. I worked in that role for a year and decided that maybe that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to work on projects, have kind of deliverables, and really go that project management route. So after a year, I was able to apply and get a different role, which is the role I am in now, working in projects and working on various strategic kind of initiatives throughout operations. So I would say that's kind of been the best thing for me that I've seen is that there are so many opportunities within financial services. If you do get yourself into something that maybe you thought that was exactly what you wanted to do, and that was everything you had dreamed of, and it doesn't end up being that way, not to worry. There's so many opportunities in financial services to kind of take your career whatever way you want to.
Awesome. And Dylan?
Yeah, so I think for me, at least in my current role, which I've been in for about a month now, is just how often things are changing, especially with the situation that we're in now. So in my current role, I'm working with our global distribution team for investment management, and a lot of the forecasts that we made prior to the beginning of this year and at the beginning of this year have changed dramatically because of just the setting that we are now in, being 5 months into the year and the economy essentially being shut down for the past 2 months. So I just the constant change of the business and reflecting on what's going on in the market, it's really interesting because it keeps you on your toes. It's not monotonous. You're really doing something different probably every day, or if you're doing the same thing as the day before, it's going in and updating what you did, fixing it, changing it, doing something else. So I think that that's one thing that I was looking for in a career, and that's something that I'm happy to have found in this current role, at least.
Awesome. Sounds great. I just want to remind everybody who's on the call, if you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat option to go ahead and send those questions over. We will take a look at those questions. I'm going to go into one more question that we actually have pre-done. If you do have any questions in the meantime, feel free to actually have those questions come through so we can go ahead and address those. But the next question that I'll actually ask is, what was your biggest challenge professionally and how did you overcome it? And let's switch it up and start with Dylan this time.
Okay, so in my last rotation, so the program that I'm in, it's a year-long rotational program. So you do 3 different jobs for 4 months. So in my last rotation, I was presenting in a team meeting, and one of the ideas that I presented got met with a lot of, I wouldn't say negative feedback, but there was some pushback from the team, which was, pretty challenging. It was pretty daunting to be, a 23-year-old kid sitting in this room with people who have worked here for 20 to 30 years. And they're asking, well, why would we do it like that when we've been doing it like this? And that's worked. And part of the reason why I like BNY Mellon so much is how much emphasis they put on innovation and constantly, improving the way that they do things. So, at first getting all that pushback was daunting, but then after sitting down with my manager, going through the idea, refining the way I was presenting it, and talking through a more effective way to have a dialogue with these people that were also on the team was really useful, because in the next team meeting, I was able to back it up better and support what I was trying to present to them in a way where it wasn't as standoffish to them, and it was more, how can I incorporate you guys in helping me with this idea rather than using this to replace something that you are already doing. If that makes sense.
Katie?
So I think my biggest challenge, just kind of coming out of college and starting my real career, was probably time management. And I say that because when you're in high school and when you're in college, your day is kind of broken up. You know exactly what class you need to go to next. You know exactly how much time you have to study, how much time you have to do your homework. Your day's kind of broken up in blocks. And I also played lacrosse in college, so I had quite a standard schedule. Every single day I knew that I went from practice to class, and then maybe back to my dorm and then back to class. And then once you start working, you don't necessarily have that same kind of standard schedule. Every day is a little bit different. You might have meetings in the morning one day and meetings in the afternoon the next, and your deadlines aren't as spelled out for you maybe as they were previously. So I might get something handed to me today that needs to be done in 6 months, but between now and then I have to meet certain deadlines, and of course I have to make sure it's done in 6 months from now. So I think that was probably the biggest kind of hurdle that I faced, was going from knowing exactly what was going to happen every single kind of part of every single day to maybe more of getting tasks kind of thrown at you and having to adjust and make sure that you can manage your time accordingly to get everything done.
Absolutely. And Chris?
Working at Newton, when I first started, I came in as an analyst supporting 5 teams. And ultimately, with that was a major challenge in itself, because here you have 5 teams, 3 people on each team, all coming to you asking you to do X amount of work. And now you basically have to sit there, figure out who you're going to do first and how you're going to get all of it done, because half the work you don't even know how to do. So from that point, what you realistically, and how I was able to overcome it, is you have to be direct with people and you have to be transparent. It's really, really, really important to make sure that you have a voice. And in order to achieve that, you have to ask people X amount of things, whether it's, when is this due? Or, who could I use for guidance? Or are there any existing materials that may be able to allow me to reference this or better understand this? But you also have to have a good balance of when asking questions and when not asking questions. You can't ask a question every time you feel like you have one. You really have to sit there, dive into the work for a little bit, a reasonable amount of time, and then take a step back and say, okay, I've got this far. I understand this amount. Now let me go to this person and structure my question this way so they know that I did my research, but I still need a little help understanding one last thing. And that just shows the person that you've done your work and your part to get as far as you can. So with that point that I just emphasize, it's one, being transparent and direct and understanding when things are due and when they're needed by, and also, maybe putting in a structure or a process for other people to come to you, or allocating your resources to ensure that you're being used effectively. So with that, I just leave it as, being direct, being transparent, and making sure that you have a voice in the office so you can do the best job you can possibly do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to take a question from the audience. One of the questions that was asked was, what would be your top 5 reasons to pursue finance? I'll let one of you answer that, whichever one of you would like to answer that.
It's basically just, in a nutshell, and to be transparent, money. One, finance obviously has so many different areas of it, but whether you're on the auditing side of finance or you're on the investment management side of finance, if you're on the audit side, you get to see the bank in a holistic view. And if you're on the investment management side, you actually see how money is managed, and you can walk away, taking those lessons and using it for your personal finances. Obviously, to an extent, you can never take inside information and trade externally. But the point that I'm trying to make there is, it only will teach you how to make money and how to manage your own money when you're working in finance, because it will allow you to meet people who may know how to do it, and they can then shed that insight to you and kind of teach you and help you grow. So really, that is one of the main reasons. Obviously, life is not all about money, but it helps in certain ways.
Awesome. Thank you. Katie, I'm going to throw this question at you. How can a teen explore different branches of finance?
It's a really good question. So there are so many kind of different jobs within finance. When I was in college, we got an opportunity through the finance group that I was in. So definitely, if you have any opportunities in college to kind of get involved in clubs and groups, absolutely do it. And we went to another bank and we walked onto their trading floor. And at that moment, I thought, this is finance in a nutshell, right? It's trading. This is all there is to finance. But actually, walking around and kind of being in that environment made me realize that maybe that wasn't for me. It was very loud. There was kind of a lot going on, and I couldn't picture myself working in that environment. And so that was definitely eye-opening for me, and it was a good way to say, okay, I got to see this. This might have been what I thought I wanted to do. Maybe it's not, but I only got that opportunity because I joined some clubs. So I was in Finance and Economics Society, and I was in Accounting Society as well, and they would offer kind of various trips and opportunities to go see different things. So without actually having to kind of work in trading, I realized that might not be what I wanted to do. So definitely, if you have any opportunities to kind of get involved and then go on those trips and see what's out there, and you don't necessarily have to work in a role to know that maybe that's not for you, or maybe it is for you when you see it. But there are a lot of opportunities in college to be able to see those things, to be able to make better choices for yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Dylan, there is a question about taking classes in high school. If you took like any finance classes or any business classes or anything like that, do you have any advice about classes, or is there classes that you took in high school or class that you wish you took in high school that you kind of wish you did, so that they actually went into your career and into your college education?
Yeah, so I was actually lucky enough. My high school had micro and macroeconomics and an introduction to accounting and an introduction to personal finance. So I took all of those my senior year, just to kind of get an idea of what the business space was. Because prior to that, I really didn't have any introduction to anything around it. So if you do have any classes like that at your high school, I would definitely recommend taking them, especially micro and macroeconomics. Even if, business may not be what you want to end up in, those are still good classes to take just to have an understanding of the economic market, and everything that's going on in the world as far as, the economy goes. It's just good personal knowledge to have. But yeah, outside of that, it's really just, see what classes are available and take as much as you can.
Awesome. Thank you. There is a question here that talks a little bit about what to do to prepare for a career in financial services and what the interview process looks like. I'm actually going to take that question for myself. I actually sit on the team that does a lot of the interviewing for interns, but I also have the pleasure of working in what we call some of our early talent programs. This past year, I had the pleasure of being a program manager for our sophomore summit program, which was, a day program for sophomores to come in to kind of explore BNY Mellon and learn a little bit about what we do, as well as our diversity and inclusion efforts. And we're actually in the process of planning on extending those programs and those initiatives into freshman year. So the freshmen and first year students actually have the opportunity to be part of our network and start learning about BNY Mellon. So I would say that one of the things that you can do is be part of those programs. So you start to build a foundation for not only what BNY Mellon is, if you actually attend our programs, but looking at programs across the board, just building a foundation in financial services, and starting to understand, what financial services does, the entities of financial services, and where you find yourself making your mark at. So that by the time that you're ready to apply for internships in like your sophomore, junior, and even your senior year, you already have that foundational knowledge that is actually going to allow you to perform better in an interview. It's going to give you the information that you need to actually prosper and matriculate into those jobs and careers that you really want to be in. And as many of the people on this panel can tell you, getting into an internship can also lead to getting into a full-time role. So those are opportunities that I would definitely take advantage of just from the very start of you going to school. Just start expanding your network, getting involved in different programming. And those kind of situations will help to lead to your career and actually make you perform better in an interview. Another question, and Chris, I'm actually going to throw this question at you. One of our guests have asked, it seems that most job fields in finance are centered on the East Coast. How can we use our finance major in terms of investment management in the West Coast? And should I attend a college on the East Coast if I want to major in finance?
Definitely not, I would say, just because you're not limited to a specific region, and that goes beyond the US as well. I mean, you could take a finance degree anywhere in the world. And just to get a little bit more granular and bring it back to the US, BNY Mellon has wealth management offices on the West Coast and in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, and there are a ton of jobs or one of our largest clients per se is, different types of pension plans, and those exist in every state. And with a pension plan, those are individuals who are, choosing which types of asset managers being firms who manage large sums of money. And those basically exist all over the world. And people who, one, need to understand how to invest that money, work for those pension plans, and two, also doing the analysis, facilitating the sales relationships, doing the auditing behind that, all those things that go into finance, are made up of that realm, and they exist everywhere. So to say that you have to go to the school on the East Coast, that's not necessarily true. I would say go to school wherever you want to go to school, because wherever you're happy, wherever you're the most passionate, means that's where you'll be the most successful, and that's what's most important.
Absolutely. Katie and Dylan, I'm actually going to have you guys both answer this next question. What kind of extracurricular activities did you do in high school that you actually feel fed into your career? And we'll start with Dylan on that one.
So I was the captain of the varsity swim team. I was a diver. That definitely taught me a lot of, I guess you could call them leadership skills. It was my senior year, so being a mentor of sorts to the underclassmen, helping them out with different things. I was also the treasurer of my class in school, so just different things like that. We didn't have that much money as a class, to be fair, but still any introduction to kind of handling money, different ways to raise money, different ideas for fundraising for the class, how much we needed to raise, planning that for, paying for our prom, different things like that. I think that those are the two main ones that I would talk about.
Awesome. Thank you.
Katie?
Thanks, Dylan. I was in a few different clubs. In high school, I was in Key Club. I was in something called Dream Factory. And we had a lot of opportunities to volunteer in those clubs. So that was great because it gives you a lot of experience and it lets you meet some new people. I also played soccer and lacrosse in high school, and I was the captain of the lacrosse team. So kind of similar to what Dylan said, it gives you an opportunity to be in a leadership position and kind of grow those skills, even if you're not in the workforce. So I would definitely recommend, if you have clubs, kind of, even if maybe they're not something associated with finance, you can still get opportunities to practice things that will help you in the financial services world. And I think that's kind of what Morgan was touching on earlier, where there are skills that you can gain, even if it's not maybe in a finance centered club, even if it's a club about volunteering. You still might be planning an event or paying attention to detail to make sure everything goes smoothly and goes on time. So there's kind of opportunities to hone in on those skills in any sort of club. So if I would join kind of anything that interests you and then see where you can apply those skills from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. One last question that I'm going to address that was sent over to us was to talk about how many years it takes to be a leader. I'm actually going to take that question just because I like that question. I found it to be interesting. Being a leader, in my eyes, doesn't necessarily mean a certain amount of years. So when you think of, do I need to be there for 2 years before I get this position? Or do I need to be there for 5 years to get this position? It's a lot more about drive and a lot more about your work ethic that will get you to the place that you want to be. So if you want to come into a company and be there for 5 years and move up through the ladders and, oversee a certain department, you definitely can. If you want to start, in a recruiting capacity, which is, a recruiter, recruiting students, and then one day end up being the manager of those students, in a small period of time. That's definitely something that's possible, and definitely, an avenue that you can take as long as you have the drive and the passion and you're doing the work to get there. So a lot of things that we talked about today, about, getting skills and, developing a network and, being involved, as a high school student and looking for those opportunities while you're in college to be involved, all of those things are actually going to lead up to you being a leader. You don't start like your process of being a leadership when you start your job per se, like after graduation. That starts right now. Like what you're doing right now already sets you apart from your peers and already makes you appear as a leader and puts you in that position to be a leader further down in your career. So it doesn't really take a certain amount of years. What it takes is a certain kind of drive, a certain kind of passion, and a want for it. So as long as you have that hunger, it's definitely something that you can get to. The last question that I'm going to throw to the panel is, if you can give one final piece of advice, what would that be? We'll start with you, Katie.
If I could give one final piece of advice, it would be, when I was in high school, it felt like every decision I kind of made was the biggest decision I was ever going to make in my life. And if I made the wrong one, then, my life was going to go terribly off track. And so I would just say one piece of advice is, every decision that you make gets you to where you want to go and where you want to be. And if you make a decision and it ends up not working out, you can always go back. You're never going to kind of make a decision that you can't, maybe turn it around a little bit if that's what you want to do. I made a start in tax and it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I made then another decision to kind of move my career elsewhere. So I would say, every decision you make, just know that as you're making it, right, you can come back from it. If you make a decision and it's not exactly what you want down the line, you can always make another one after that. You'll have that next opportunity.
Chris?
Yeah, I would say it kind of goes along to what I've been saying, and I know the other panelists on this call have also been saying it, but the best thing you can do is network. Say yes to opportunities that will only make you more advanced in your career, and give everything but up. Be persistent, keep trying, stay motivated. When you need to take a break, but at the end of the day, make connections, network, and just keep progressing, keep pioneering, and just stay strong, because through life you may get knocked down, but as long as you can get back up again, you'll be winning at the end.
Awesome. And Dylan?
Yeah, just to echo what Chris and Katie both said, keep an open mind, be flexible. I know I definitely wouldn't be here today if I had stuck to my original plan going into college, graduating high school. So, you have to adapt to the situation that you're in. And as you grow and progress through the next few years, your mindset may change completely. So just make sure that you're constantly thinking about that and, thinking, is this really what I want to do? And be flexible with that. Keep an open mind, try to get involved in as much as you can, take as many different classes as you can, just to get a sense of what you're interested in, what you're not interested in, and then go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. Before we close today, I have one more member of BNY Mellon to introduce to everybody. Christine Newton is here to join us as well, just to give some closing remarks to everybody. So, Christy?
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Unfortunately, I can't turn on my video. I don't think the capabilities are not there, I believe, but really great to be able to listen to all of the panelists' questions and answers. I think that, first of all, thank you, panelists, and of course, they're my colleagues, so thanks for taking time after work to do this. Thank you, Luis, as well, for your great insights. Overall, as Michael, as the panelists, as everyone has really mentioned, at this time, the best thing that you guys can be doing is networking with your peers, building that network. The video icon came up. Hello. Building those networks and just figuring out what you like versus what you don't like. I think that that's really a valuable takeaway while you're in high school. Even when you're going through college, it's figuring out what things that you enjoy, what makes you feel like you're doing a good job and that you're excited about your work, whether that's a group project, working with people, or maybe independent analysis. You know, what really drives you every day that's just important to take note of right now, and you'll really thank yourselves later. Also, of course, continue networking with your peers, but also with us. If you don't have a LinkedIn just yet, please get one, connect with us. We would love to continue, just guiding you, giving you advice, and seeing where you land. I definitely hope one day it's with us in just a few years, couple years. We're going to have opportunities for you. Starting with freshman year of college, we do have some great engagement opportunities and programs to just get you acclimated at the firm as well. So really hoping you take advantage of those. But for now, as Michael mentioned, you're doing the right thing. Keep on signing into events like this, network with, various corporations, and there's just so much out there for you in this industry. So we're really excited to see where you go, but keep it up. And just keep in touch. And thank you so much for having us tonight.